The roar of a consuming fire fills the air. Through the smoke and chaos, a single figure moves against the tide, clutching one book to their chest. This is the story of a scholar who saved one book from flames. You will learn the true story of a rescue that changed the course of human knowledge. Who was this person, and what secret wisdom was held within those pages that made them risk everything in a world tearing itself apart? What single idea do you believe is worth saving from oblivion? The air itself smelled of smoke and fear. This was not a single fire, but an age of them, a time when empires clashed and the very foundations of civilization seemed to tremble. The Mongols, a storm of disciplined horsemen from the eastern steppes, were at the gates of Baghdad. It was the year 1258, and the heart of the Islamic Golden Age was about to be torn out. For centuries, Baghdad had been a beacon of learning, its libraries overflowing with centuries of accumulated wisdom. Think of the House of Wisdom, a legendary academy where scholars of all faiths translated the works of the Greeks, the Indians, and the Persians, advancing knowledge in medicine, astronomy, and mathematics to heights not seen since. This was a world where books were not just objects, they were the lifeblood of progress, each one painstakingly copied by hand on precious parchment. To lose a library was to lose 1,000 voices, to erase a chapter of the human story forever, and that is precisely why it was targeted. The invading forces understood that to conquer a culture, you must first conquer its memory. The destruction of its knowledge was a weapon as potent as any sword, a deliberate act to shatter a people's identity and their connection to a glorious past. Amidst this calculated chaos, one man saw the flames licking at the edges of history and made a choice that would echo through the centuries. His name was Ibn al-Kamil, and he was a guardian of words. He was not a soldier or a prince, but a librarian and a scholar, a man whose life was dedicated to the quiet, meticulous work of preserving knowledge. For years, he had walked the hushed corridors of Baghdad's great libraries, his world defined by the scent of ink and the soft rustle of parchment. His hands were accustomed to the careful handling of ancient texts, not the desperate grip required to snatch one from the inferno. He was, by all accounts, an unlikely hero for such a violent hour. What drove a man of letters to run toward destruction when every instinct for self-preservation screamed to flee? His motivation was not a sudden burst of courage, but the culmination of a lifetime's devotion. He understood that these books were not merely objects. They were vessels containing the collective genius of generations, the very reason their civilization had flourished. To lose them was to surrender their future. While we do not know the intimate details of his family or his personal joys, we know his life's work. He was a curator of the human spirit, and in that moment of ultimate crisis, his duty became his destiny. His remarkable act was not that of a mythical figure performing a superhuman feat, but of a profoundly relatable individual who simply refused to let the light go out. He chose one book, a single thread of wisdom, and in doing so, he made the most difficult decision any scholar could ever face. The book Ibn al-Kamil saved was not a grand, jewel-encrusted volume, but a practical and profound work of medicine. Its title was The Canon of Medicine, and its author was the Persian polymath Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna. This was not merely a book of remedies. It was a monumental encyclopedia that synthesized all medical knowledge from the ancient Greeks, like Galen and Hippocrates, with the discoveries of Islamic and Indian physicians, organizing it into a single, coherent scientific system. For 5 centuries, it had been the definitive textbook of healing, a bridge between eras and empires. Within its pages lay systematic descriptions of diseases, detailed anatomy, and the properties of hundreds of drugs. It introduced the concept of clinical trials, the importance of diet and environment on health, and even the idea that some diseases are spread through tiny, unseen organisms. This was a radical notion, a spark of germ theory flickering in a world that still blamed illness on bad air or divine displeasure. The canon represented a cornerstone of rational, evidence-based science. Its loss would have been a catastrophic amnesia for the medical world. Imagine a timeline where the most advanced medical knowledge of the ancient and medieval worlds simply vanished into ash. The painstaking observations about contagious diseases, the meticulous classifications of ailments from asthma to diabetes, the surgical techniques and pharmaceutical compilations, all would have been erased. Progress in medicine would have been set back by centuries, forced to rediscover truths that Avicenna had already compiled and clarified. This is precisely why such a book was a target. It embodied a worldview where human reason could understand and improve the natural world, a direct challenge to any power that sought control through ignorance. And this is also why it was a prize worth any risk to preserve. By saving the canon, Ibn al-Kamil was not just saving a book, he was saving a method, a legacy of inquiry that would eventually travel from the smoldering ruins of Baghdad to the fledgling universities of Europe, guiding the hands of doctors and the minds of scientists for generations to come. He chose the book that held the instructions for healing humanity itself. The heat was a physical wall, and the air tasted of cinders. Ibn al-Kamil moved through a city screaming in its death throes, the grand avenues now choked with rubble and fleeing shadows. The great libraries were already ablaze, their priceless contents fueling a pyre that lit the sky a sickly orange. He was not running away. He was navigating a treacherous path toward the very heart of the conflagration, the scriptorium where the master copies were kept. His goal was not a random shelf, but a specific cabinet. Its location burned into his memory from 1,000 quiet days. Getting there meant dodging patrols of soldiers whose orders were to leave no center of learning standing. He would have used his knowledge of the building service corridors, narrow passages meant for servants and scholars, now filled with smoke and the terrifying sound of groaning timbers. Every sense screamed at him to turn back, but his mind was fixed on a single point, a single volume. The canon of medicine was not stored with the decorative, showpiece volumes. It was kept with the working texts, its binding worn from centuries of use. He found it, his hands closing around the familiar, heavy parchment just as a section of the ceiling collapsed in a shower of sparks and shattered tile. This was the moment of ultimate choice. To escape, he would need both hands free to climb over debris and navigate the chaos. Instead, he tucked the precious book securely inside his robe, against his chest, sacrificing his balance and his ability to shield his own face for the book's protection. His escape was a blur of instinct and terror, a desperate scramble through a dying city. He would have sought refuge not in a home, which could be looted or burned, but perhaps in the one place an invading army might overlook, a humble bathhouse, a nondescript cellar, or the crowded home of a trusted colleague. The immediate danger was not over. The book, saved from the fire, now had to be saved from the conquerors who would surely destroy it if found. He would have carefully wrapped it in plain cloth, hiding its distinctive binding, treating it not as a treasure, but as a secret. In that dark, hidden space, with the sounds of a city being dismantled echoing outside, the fate of 1,000 years of medical knowledge rested on the silence of one man and the integrity of a single, salvaged thread. The fate of Ibn al-Kamil himself is lost to the smoke of that day, his personal story likely ending in the obscurity that followed the sack of the city. Yet the book he saved, the canon of medicine, began a new and far-reaching journey. While the original manuscript he clutched may not have survived the centuries, its contents did, replicated and carried to safety by other scholars who understood its worth. From the ruins of Baghdad Copies of the canon traveled along trade routes and into the great centers of learning in Egypt, North Africa, and Persia. It became the foundational medical text for the Islamic world for centuries, its principles of diagnosis and treatment guiding physicians from Cordoba to Damascus. Then, in the 12th century, it crossed another critical bridge. It was translated into Latin, the language of European scholarship, and it exploded into the medieval mind. In the fledgling universities of places like Bologna and Paris, the canon of medicine became the core curriculum, the undisputed authority for training doctors. For nearly 600 years, this book, saved from the flames, was the primary textbook of medicine in the West. The very methods you see in modern healthcare, the reliance on clinical observation, the systematic testing of treatments, and the rational approach to disease, all trace a part of their lineage back through the pages of this single, salvaged volume. It is a staggering thought, the courageous act of one man in a single, terrifying afternoon helped preserve a system of knowledge that would eventually heal millions. It reminds us that history is not just shaped by the loud actions of kings and conquerors, but by the quiet, defiant choices of individuals in the face of oblivion. Our entire world is built upon such fragile threads, saved against all odds. So we must ask you, if you were faced with that impossible choice, if the fires were rising and you could save only one book, one idea, one piece of our collective knowledge, what would you carry with you? What is the one thread you would ensure survives for the future? Share your choice in the comments below.